Here are all of my videos of 2022. Enjoy. 5 must-have materials before you animate a brick film. First, of course, you need some kind of camera. You don't need a fancy camera to start animating. I personally use my phone. You're also gonna need something to keep your camera held in place. The best option is to use a tripod because of the different kinds of angles you can get with it. But if you don't have this, you can simply build one out of Lego. You're also gonna need a light source. Don't use sunlight because sunlight is inconsistent. Instead, use lamps. One lamp is the bare minimum, but if you want to have the best lighting, go for 3 paper diffused lamps. This will ensure your set is fully lit with 3-point lighting. The next thing you absolutely need is a way to combine all your photos. I use an app called Stop Motion Studio Pro, but use what works for you. The next must-have is a base plate. Base plates are easy to build on and keep your minifigures held in place. And those were how to add electricity effects to your animations. To do this effect, I will be using some transparent blue pieces, a flashlight, some sticky tack, a Lego skeleton, and a minifigure. You're going to start off with your minifigure standing still. Then shine the light on the minifigure. Then swap the minifigure for a skeleton. You can add the transparent blue pieces on the skeleton using sticky tack. Then swap back to the minifigure. I am using an onion skin tool to help see where the minifigure was in the last frame. You can repeat this process as many times as you need, or you can copy and paste the last few frames to have it repeat. Tripods are a staple piece of equipment when animating. Tripods keep your camera still so that you don't have any unwanted shaky cam. With a tripod, you can also adjust them to get different angles in your movies. They are especially useful when they can get high angles that are hard to capture. If you don't have access to a tripod, you can always build your own out of Lego pieces. This Lego tripod will get the basics done, but you won't be able to get extra cinematic shots as you would with a normal tripod. And that's why I use a clicker when I animate. By the way, this video is not sponsored. I use this tool so that I don't need to touch my camera when I animate. This helps to reduce the amount of shaky cam in my videos. Of course, sometimes I want some shaky cam in my videos. This also gives me more control over my videos because I can decide when I want the camera to move and when I don't want it to move. And that's how I animate my fight scenes in my brick films. When I film action, I have the camera follow the minifigure to make it feel like you're there. To achieve this effect, I will move my tripod with the minifigure. If I can't move my tripod, I will move the base plate instead. I will also use an onion skin tool to make sure everything lines up. During the fight, I will also change camera angles frequently to keep the audience engaged. When a character is hit, I will shake the camera a little to create some motion blur. I am also using clay to support the minifigures while they're in action. How to make your minifigures jump in your brick films, Part 2. This jump requires masking, meaning that I need to go back and edit out any stands or rigs. You're going to start off with your minifigure standing still. Then you're going to have something support the minifigure in midair. I am using sticky tack to support my minifigure. Another important thing to do is to take pictures of your scene without the minifigure in it for each frame that it's in midair. Then when the minifigure lands, I will use some more sticky tack to get it into the position I need. To mask, you will click the erase icon. Here it will bring you to an erasing tab. Here you can select the frame you want to erase off of and erase all the supports. This tool is basically taking 2 images and laying them on top of each other. Every time you erase, you are replacing the erased picture with the frame that only has the background. How to make your minifigures jump in your brick films. This jump requires no masking. That means that I don't need to go back and remove any rigs or stands. You're going to start off with your minifigure standing still. Then place some sticky tack on the minifigure's head. I am holding the minifigure out of frame to make it look like it's in midair. I will be doing the same thing for the next few frames. I am also using an onion skin tool to help me decide where I want the minifigure to go in the next frame. Once the minifigure lands, I will place sticky tack under the minifigure to get it into the position I need. The one downside to this jump is that there may have shadows of your hands in the shot, but it's hard to notice if you get it right. How to animate punches and kicks in your brick films. When you're animating a punch or a kick, you need the figure to wind up before he punches. This means that he has to prepare his punch by moving his arm back. This is called anticipation, and it can really help the audience understand what is about to happen in your film. When your minifigure is swinging his arm, you want to ease in and ease out the movement by starting slow, accelerating, and then ending slowly. Once it hits the minifigure, you want to move the character back to show that the punch was impactful, or not, depending on the context. You can also shake your camera to give a motion blur effect once the fist hits the minifigure. If you want to give your minifigure more momentum when he is punching or kicking, you can also move the entire body of the minifigure. If you want to give the minifigure more reach, you can detach the arms or legs and add sticky tack at the ends. And that's how to make your minifigures fly in your animations part 1. This effect requires no masking. That means you don't have to go back and erase any rigs or stands. You're going to start off with your minifigure out of frame. Then in the next picture, move the minifigure more to the center and hold him out of frame. To avoid creating shadows, I am holding the minifigure out of frame with sticky tack. Then in the next frame, I'm doing the same thing but moving the minifigure to the direction I need him to go. Repeat this process until the minifigure is completely out of frame. Try to avoid taking pictures with your hands in it or the sticky tack, because then it will break the illusion. And that's how to make your minifigures fly in your animations part 2. This effect requires masking. That means that you have to go back and erase any rigs or stands. You're going to start off with your minifigure slightly out of frame. Then in the next frame, attach sticky tack to the bottom of the minifigure. Then remove the minifigure and take a picture. This picture will be the layer that we will be masking on. Repeat this process until the minifigure is out of frame. Once you're finished animating, go to the Erase tab in Stop Motion Studio Pro. First select the picture with no minifigure in it. Then select the erase tool and adjust the circle to the size you need. Now erase the sticky tack that is supporting the minifigure. The concept of masking is taking two images and layering them on top of each other. Every time you erase, you are removing a portion of the picture with the minifigure in it and replacing it with a picture that has no minifigure. Now that the sticky tack is removed, delete the pictures with no minifigure in them. And that's how to reduce light flickering in your animations. The first thing you're going to want to do is block out any natural sunlight. This is because when you're animating, the sun is moving. This creates different lighting over time, and we don't want that. The next thing to do is to use lamps instead, because the lighting from here is more consistent. Then you want to wear a darker colored shirt. You want to avoid wearing brighter colored shirts because they reflect in the Lego pieces. Make sure to have your hands far away from your lights, because then it will create unwanted shadows. You also don't want to have your camera on autofocus or exposure. This is because the camera will be consistently changing the focus and lighting, creating more flickering. You want to be able to control your lighting in your animations. And that's how to make your animations smoother, part 1. One way to do this is to use the technique of easing in and easing out. This is basically having the movement of almost anything start slow, accelerate, and then end slowly. This makes your movement look more natural. For example, here is an arm swing with easing in and easing out. And here is an arm swing without the technique. You can use onion skin as always to help guide you on the movement. This technique doesn't apply to all movement. It mostly applies to organic movement and cars and other vehicles. However, when animating robots, you may want to stick to consistent movements. And that's how to make your animation smoother, part 2. If you are filming at a low frame rate, increasing your frame rate will definitely make your animation smoother. This will also mean that you will have to take more pictures when animating. However, once you have a higher frame rate, it's less about the frame rate and more about the technique. You can have a very high frame rate, but still have a very choppy animation. One way to fix this is to have your characters follow an arc. For example, here, when my character is getting up, he follows a half circle arc. This makes the character look like he has has a weight that he has to support. Adding small things like this will help sell your animation and make them feel more real. And that's how to animate speeder bikes in your brick films. First, to make the speeder hover over, I will add cone pieces at the bottom in a place where it's hard to see. For a shot that follows the speeder, I will have the camera and base plate held in place. I will also have the speeder mostly in one place. Then, I will move the surroundings to the left of the speeder for each frame. To make the background continuous, I will constantly add pieces of the background coming in from the right. I am reusing the pieces that have gone off screen and placing them back in the frame in a different arrangement. From time to time, I will have the speeder interact with its surroundings to make it feel more real. Don't forget to move all the components of the background because then it will look like the object froze. And that's why I use a grid tool when I animate. This helps me set up my scenes. If you're in Stop Motion Studio, you will find a grid icon on the bottom left corner of your screen. Here, you can click it to turn it on. This grid divides the screen into 9 boxes. This tool is useful if you want to center your minifigure. It can also be used to set up your scene and decide where your minifigures are going to be positioned. And that, I lied in one of my videos. Well, kind of. About a week and a half ago, I made a video about why I use a grid tool to animate. Turns out this is actually the rule of thirds, a common technique used in film. I said that it was used to center your minifigures. However, it is actually the complete opposite. When you're using this rule, you want your subjects on the intersection of the lines. Placing your minifigures in the center actually breaks the rule of thirds. But to be fair, sometimes you want to place your subjects in the center. I hate to say it, but here is how I animate my stop motions. The first thing I do is close my drapes to reduce light flicker. Then I wear a black shirt to reduce reflections in the Lego. After, I turn on my paper diffused desk lamps. Then I tape down my set so it doesn't move. I hook up my phone to my tripod and now I can start animating. To animate, I use Stop Motion Studio Pro. Here I'm just adjusting the lighting and the focus and also the zoom. Now I'm just trying to get the minifigure inside of the square box, and now I can start taking pictures and moving my minifigure. More on how to add fire effects to your animations. For this effect, you're going to need a lot of flame pieces and a flashlight with a transparent orange piece on it. When you're animating fire, you want the flames to be consistently moving. That means in every frame, the flame has to be moved. You can change the flame size to show how unexpected fire is. Since fire is so unexpected, there is no arc to fire, so you can just move the pieces as you please. You also want to shine the orange light on the flame. You want to move the light every frame to stay consistent with the flame. Animating flamethrowers is the same concept. The only difference is that you have to add sticky tack to connect it to the arm of the minifigure. And here is 3 tips to make animating minifigures falling more realistic. The first one is to shake your camera a little in one frame when the minifigure hits the ground. This gives this motion blur effect. Number 2 is to raise the legs of the minifigure when the minifigure hits the ground. This really helps to sell the effect that the minifigure was hit very hard. The third and last tip is to give your minifigure a little bounce when he falls. In the first frame, you can raise the legs or the entire body off the ground, and then in the next frame, placing the legs or body down. This also sells the effect that the minifigure has a weight when he falls. And those were how to add smoke effects to your animations part 2. This effect is much more realistic than the last one. First, you're going to open up DaVinci Resolve. Then you're going to download a video of smoke with a black background that you can find on YouTube. Dragging your smoke effect and place it on top of your clip. Then open up the inspector tab and scroll down. Here you will find a box. Change it to screen. Now you can adjust the opacity to your likings. And that's 2 ways to improve your sword fights. Number 1 is to follow the action. You can do this by changing camera angles every few seconds and following the movement of the characters as they move. Note that you don't want to overdo the amount of movement. One good tip is to ease in and ease out the camera movement. This is by moving the camera slowly, accelerating, and then slowing down again. This will ensure that the movement is easier to follow. The last tip is to give your characters a fighting style. Perhaps they fight with more swords or a double blade double-bladed lightsaber. Maybe they are very acrobatic and they use this to their advantage. The fighting style of a character may go in line with their personality. Fighting styles will definitely help develop your characters and make sword fights more engaging. And those were 3 more tips to improve your sword fights in your animations. Number 1 is to have your characters use their surroundings to their advantage. This makes their location feel less like just a background. One example is using the mountain to get the high ground, or using walls to their advantage. You can also use objects from the background to enhance your fights. Number 2 is pace your fights correctly. Intense fighting is good, but after a while the viewer may tap out, so you can add dialogue to remind the audience why these characters are fighting. The last tip is to put yourself in the character's position. I'm talking more strategically than emotionally. Where would you strike if you were the character? This often helps me decide where the minifigures will block and strike. And those were 2 effects you can add to your animations to make them more spooky. Number 1 is adding blood. You can do this with sticky tack, clay, or Play-Doh, or you can use Lego pieces. I'm using transparent red studs to represent blood here, and I'm sticking them onto the minifigure with sticky tack. The next one has to do with lighting. If you turn off all your light and have only one light source below the minifigure, it can create a spooky Halloween vibe. And those are 2 holiday effects that you can add to your animations. First, you can add snow to your sets. Simply take tiles and plates in white and place them on your set. You can also add snow effects on top of that. I have a full tutorial on this if you are interested. The next thing you can add are flashlights in different colors. Simply add a colored transparent piece of your choice on top of your flashlight. These can represent Christmas lights. And those were how to add bazooka effects to your animations. For this effect, you're going to need a bunch of small white pieces, a flashlight, some transparent orange pieces, a minifigure, a bazooka, and some sticky tack. You're going to start off by adding an orange transparent stud to the back of the bazooka. Then in the next frame, add a flame piece. And then a bigger flame piece with 2 white studs. Then shine the orange light on the minifigure. Now place some cylinder pieces on the projectile and add more white pieces in the back with sticky tack. Then in the next frame, remove the bigger white piece for a stud. Then hold the projectile slightly out of frame. You can also make the minifigure get pushed back a little from the shot. And that's how I made these Dark Trooper scenes look so cinematic. Most of the magic came from the lighting. I first turned on one of my desk lamps. Then I placed these smaller lights that fit in the background. Then I turned them on with a button. These lights give this blue look to the scene. To contrast the blue light, I took a flashlight and attached a transparent red Lego piece to create some red lighting. Then I shined it in the scene. To create the red flickering, I took a picture with the red light and then in the next frame took another one without it. And that's adding sound effects and music will drastically improve your animations. Sound effects really bring your animation to life. They give a better feeling of what's happening. They make your environment feel more real. Music also does something similar. It makes you feel emotions and makes the movie less flat. You can improve a poor animation by simply adding music and it won't seem as bad after. Just take this one with absolutely no sound. And then this one with sound. This shows that sounds can really improve your animations, and that's why everything you need to know about frame rate when animating. First, what is frame rate? Frame rate is the amount of pictures that appear in 1 second. This is also called FPS or frames per second. This applies to any type of video content. In animation, if your frame rate is 24, that means you have to take 24 pictures to make 1 second in your video. The standard frame rate in film is 24 frames per second. When you start off in animation, don't go for an extremely high FPS. Start at a low FPS and slowly climb up to around 24 FPS. Going over 24 FPS is pretty much a waste of time, but if you have the patience to do it, try it out. Right now I use 12 FPS and one day I may go up to 15, but I probably won't be increasing my FPS too much because of how much extra time it takes to animate. Increasing your frame rate will definitely make your animation smoother if you are filming at a low FPS, but once it gets closer to 24 FPS, it's less about the frame rate and more about the technique. And that's how to add more articulation to your minifigures with helmets. You're going to need sticky tack, a minifigure with a helmet, and a Lego stud. First, remove the minifigure's helmet and head. In the helmet, add a stud. After, place the sticky tack inside the helmet. I put the stud so that if the sticky tack ever gets stuck, it won't get stuck in the helmet, but in the stud instead. This way it's easier to remove. After, place the helmet back on the minifigure. Now you can animate head bobs and shakes. You can also animate more dynamic conversations with this technique. This will also add more emotions to the words that the character is saying. And that's how to articulate your minifigure's arms in your animations. To do this, you're going to need sticky tack and the minifigure. First, detach the arm of the minifigure and place sticky tack on it. Don't push the sticky tack all the way in because then it will get stuck. Now place the arm back on the minifigure. When I animate, I always try my best to hide the sticky tack. The minifigure has more mobility now because of the range of motion it has. You can now move the arm in almost any direction you want it to go. And that's how to further articulate your minifigure's legs. For this, you're going to need sticky tack and a minifigure. First, detach the minifigure's leg and attach sticky tack. As usual, don't push the sticky tack all the way in because then it will get stuck. Now you can move your minifigure's legs in almost any direction. This is especially useful when you're animating kicks, since you have more range of motion. You can also pose your minifigures in cool ways like this one right here. Just reverse the hip piece and place one leg in front. And that's 3-point lighting is the base for most lighting in movies. To light your sets with 3-point lighting, you will need 3 lights. The first one is the key light. This is the main light on your subject. If you were to keep only one light, it would probably be the key light. The next one is the fill light. This one fills in the shadows of your subject. And finally, there is the backlight. This light is supposed to help distinguish the background from the subject. Now, if you don't have access to 3 lamps, you can use Lego pieces or paper. This will create an artificial light on your minifigures. The white pieces will be reflecting the light on the subject. And that's why 2 ways to remove sticky tack from your Lego pieces. The first way is to use a skewer or a toothpick. This is great at getting into small areas on your Lego pieces. When you're using a skewer or a toothpick, don't push too hard because then the sticky tack may get stuck in the Lego even more. When you're taking it out, try to go for the sides. The downside to this method is that it can't get rid of large amounts of sticky tack. The second method is to simply put your Lego piece underwater. The upside to this technique is that it can get rid of a lot of sticky tack in one shot. This may take a while. The only thing is that it doesn't always work. And here are how to animate satisfying builds in your brick films. Animating builds is pretty simple. You're going to start off by placing your brick above the stud. Then, in the next frame, push the piece all the way down. Repeat this process until you are finished your build. This makes it seem like the bricks are appearing out of nowhere and then clicking into the studs by themselves. It makes it very satisfying to watch. And that's how to add Lego particle effects to your brick films. For these effects, you're going to need any color of 1x1 piece and some sticky tack. Particle effects work best with sparks, explosions, or any other type of impact. To add particle effects from an impact, all the pieces should come from a source. Then they will spread out. This applies to most particles involving impacts. You can use sticky tack to attach these pieces to parts of the background or other minifigures. Particles will make your impacts more impactful. Particles don't only apply to impacts, they also apply to water, lava, or any other liquid as well. And that's how to animate cars in your brick films. For this, you're going to need a car and at least 2 base plates. To sell this illusion, we are going to push the base plate back and then roll the car forward. Make sure to roll the car in approximately the same place where it started. You can use an onion skin tool to line up the car with the last frame. This will give the illusion that the camera is following the car, but in reality, it's the background that's moving. To infinitely loop this, take the last base plate and place it at the front. Repeat this process until your car has reached its destination. And that's how to add lightsaber effects to your animations in DaVinci Resolve. First, select your clip and go down to the Fusion page. Then drag in the merge node and connect it to the yellow line by shift clicking. Now for this step, you're going to need to download a plugin called Proto V2. Once that is downloaded, click Ctrl and then space and type in Proto V2. Then select it and drag it in. You will also need to drag in a polygon node. Click the square symbol on the left and attach it to the Proto node. Then select the proto node and attach it to the merge node. Now select the polygon node and go up to the viewing tab. Your mouse will be replaced with a cross. Right click to draw a quick outline around your lightsaber. Once that's done, select the proto node and open up the inspector tab. Then check the outline solid box. This will fill in the lightsaber. Now in the settings, you can adjust the size, color, opacity, and much more. For each frame, you're going to have to mask it manually. And that's more on how to add missile effects to your animations. For this effect, you're going to need a few white pieces, a transparent orange stud, a flame piece, a lightsaber hilt, any bar piece, and a flashlight. You're going to start off by adding the lightsaber hilt to the minifigure. Then attach sticky tack to the orange transparent stud and attach it to the jetpack. Also shine a light with a transparent orange piece on the minifigure. Then in the next frame, attach white pieces behind the lightsaber hilt. Slowly add more white pieces and move the orange stud down. The white pieces will represent the smoke. Then in the next frame, remove the orange stud. Then attach the Lego bar piece to the lightsaber hilt and hold it out of frame. Replace the white piece that's on the lightsaber hilt with a flame piece. Slowly make the smoke disappear from the back of the minifigure. And that's a little more on what I do before I animate. The first thing I do is come up with an idea. Most of the time I get inspired by other TV shows, movies, or books. Then I storyboard or script. Storyboarding helps me get an idea of what shots and angles I want to film before I film. If I have an idea and I don't feel like drawing it out, I will script instead. Scripts and storyboards don't always work out 100% of the time. Sometimes in my storyboards it works out, but when I actually start animating, it doesn't work so well. All of this helps me decide what minifigures I need to use and what environments my characters will be in. This also helps me set up my set design. And that's how to add grapple hook effects to your animations, part 1. For this, you're going to need a 1x1 black stud, sticky tack, and a string piece with a stud at the end. First, attach the 1x1 stud to the hand of the minifigure. Then take out the 1x1 and replace it with a string piece. Hold the other end of the string piece out of frame so it seems like it's floating. The next part is to capture the minifigure with the grapple hook. First, hold the string piece out of frame. Then attach sticky tack to one end and attach it to the minifigure. In each frame, wrap the piece around the minifigure. You can wrap the string around as many times as you want. I try to tighten the string, but not too much because after it's a hassle to remove. And that's how to add grapple hook effects to your animations, part 2. For this effect, you're going to need a bar piece, a twist tie, sticky tack, and a 1x1 black stud. First, attach the 1x1 stud to the minifigure's hand. Then in the next frame, hold the bar piece out of frame next to the stud. The next part is to capture a minifigure with the grapple hook. Now, if you want to wrap the minifigure with the grapple hook, you can't use the bar piece because it doesn't bend. That means you have to use the twist tie. First, hold the twist tie out of frame. Then wrap the minifigure with the twist tie. If you're having trouble wrapping the minifigure with the twist tie, you can use sticky tack. Use this grapple hook method if you don't have the Lego string piece with a stud at the end. And that's how to add jetpack effects to your animations. For this effect, you're going to need a flashlight with a transparent orange piece on it, a minifigure with a jetpack, sticky tack, 2 transparent orange studs, and a cone piece. You're going to start off by attaching sticky tack to the stud piece, then put it on the jetpack. After, shine the light on the minifigure. Do this for every frame except for the last one. In the next frame, remove the stud and replace it with the cone piece. Now attach sticky tack to the minifigure's head and place a bar piece on top of it. This part is optional. I do this so that there are less shadows when I hold him out of frame. Another thing that is optional is adding any flame piece under the cone piece. Now slowly move the minifigure out of frame. Once the minifigure is gone, turn off the flashlight. And that's 2 ways to improve your set designs in your brick films. The first one is to create modulars. No, I'm not talking about the Lego modular buildings. I'm talking about creating small pieces of the set that you can remove. This is useful if you want to get a specific shot when an object is in the way. For example, if this tree is in the way, it's easy to remove and then place it back. This can also be useful if you're using the same trees, walls, or rocks in other shots. The second tip is to avoid over detailing the parts of the set where your minifigure is. Putting detail in your sets is great, but try to do this for everything around the minifigure. Leave studs for your minifigures to move. And here are how to add smoke effects to your animations, part 1. This effect can be applied to many other effects like missile effects, explosions, bazooka effects, and much more. For this effect, you're going to need Lego pieces or cotton balls. When you're animating smoke, it should always be moving. You also want to ease in and ease out the movement. The smoke will start small, then get bigger, and then slowly disappear. And that's Why base plates are a must-have when animating. Base plates are amazing at keeping your minifigures still. This is extremely useful in almost any scenario when a minifigure is moving. Without it, balancing your minifigures can become a hassle since they tend to easily be knocked over. Animating without a base plate is possible with sticky tack, but it's a lot harder to do. When you are animating with a base plate, you want it to be held in place. This is so it doesn't move. You can use tape or sticky tack to do this. You can also use base plates as background element, and that's... When animating, camera angles are very important. Adding different shots can convey different emotions. It can also keep the viewer more engaged in your movie. A tripod is very important when you're trying to film different angles because it keeps the camera in place. When I animate, I try to have the camera mostly at level with the minifigures. Sometimes I will film only one part of the minifigure to keep the audience intrigued. Or other times I will film a wide shot to show what is around my minifigure. Here are 3 questions I get asked a lot that I will be replying in this video. First, what apps do I use? I use Stop Motion Studio Pro to animate and to do some of the editing. Then, most of my core editing is done in DaVinci Resolve 18. For my short form content, like this one, I use CapCut to edit. Next, what camera do I use to animate? I just use my phone to animate, which is currently a Pixel 3a. And lastly, what frame rate do I use? I started off with 5 frames per second, then jumped up to 10 frames per second, and now I use 12 frames per second. How I add sound effects to my stop motions. In Stop Motion Studio Pro, I will go to the Audio tab. Then I will select the audio I want. After, I will click back on the audio icon, and here I can trim my audio to match my stop motion. Most of my audio comes from YouTube. How to animate blaster effects and deflections. To animate the blaster effect, you will start off with a transparent stud with sticky tack attached to it. Then add some red lighting to make the laser pop out more. Then swap the stud for a cone piece attached to a lightsaber blade. For the deflection, you can use the cone piece or the stud. Then swap that for the lightsaber blade. To stick them on, I am using sticky tack. If you want, you can make the minifigure have a reaction to the shot. I am easing out the light as the blaster shot goes away. You can also use an onion skin tool to line up the laser. And that's how to animate the walk cycle with minifigures that can't move their legs. This walk cycle is very simple. You're going to start off with your minifigure standing still. Then you're going to raise the minifigure forward as well as moving the arms. Then move the minifigure to the next studs. The minifigure will still have its legs not pushed into the studs. Then, in the next frame, push the minifigure in the studs and repeat this process as many times as you need. And that's how to add motion blur to your brick films, part 1. I am going to use a sword for this motion blur. Once the sword gets to the middle of its arc, that's when I will be adding sticky tack and a 1x4 wedge plate. You can use any piece that works for you. Just make sure that it matches the color of your object so that it stays consistent. Once my sword reaches the end of its arc, I will remove the piece because it's no longer in motion. You don't want to overdo the amount of frames that have the extra piece in the back because it's supposed to be very quick. It should be only 1 or 2 frames. And that's how to add motion blur effects to your brick films, part 2. For this motion blur, I'm going to be building up a build. This build will roughly match my minifigure, but it's going to be a little bit longer. I am going to start off with nothing in the shot. Then I will place the build in the frame. After, I will switch the build for the minifigure and then slowly have the minifigure stop. I am also adding some electricity pieces to add some more detail. And that's... Here is more on how I add sounds to my animations. To record, I use a mic that I attach to my phone. Then, in Stop Motion Studio Pro, I will click the microphone icon and then click record. Once I'm finished recording, I will click stop and then done. For all my other audio, I will copy the video link from YouTube. I will then put the video through a YouTube to MP3 converter. Once it's downloaded, I will click the plus icon and then I can select the audio I need. I can then trim it if necessary. Why onion skin is so useful. You may be thinking about this onion skin, but I'm talking about this onion skin. Onion skinning is a technique in animation used to see the last frame on top of your current frame. If you're using Stop Motion Studio, you will find a bar where you can turn on onion skin. Right here, I'm using onion skin to line the last frame with my current frame to have a good follow through. If you knock your minifigure over, you can get it back up and match it up with the last frame. This tool is also very useful when you are animating blasters. When the laser is floating, you can line the blaster with the last frame to make it flow in a more smooth way. And that's... Incorporating camera movements can really improve your animations. Here's an example of a camera movement where the camera follows your minifigure. To animate this, I will have the minifigure walk from left to right. Then I can move my tripod to try and match the last frame. I will use an onion skin tool to see where the minifigure was in the last frame. Then I will repeat the process of moving the minifigure and then moving my tripod. If you don't want to move the tripod, you can move the base plate instead. This will give the illusion that the camera is following the minifigure. Sticky tack is a lifesaver when it comes to animating. You can articulate your minifigures in ways that couldn't be possible without it. You can detach the arms from a minifigure and move them in different positions. When you're animating the walk cycle or the run cycle, it's extremely useful to balance your minifigure with it. You can even attach it to minifigures to represent blood or sparks. However, one thing you should avoid is putting it in helmets, because it gets stuck and it's extremely hard to remove. Only do this if you know you can remove it. And that's why, how to animate mouths on your minifigures. So first, in Stop Motion Studio Pro, I will go to the Edit tab. Then I will click the plus icon and then the face icon. Now I can choose the mouth I want, and adjust it to the position I need. I also remove the eyes. When I am adjusting the mouth, I try to cover the original mouth as best as I can. Once I'm done, I go to the next frame and choose a different mouth. I repeat this process until the minifigure is done speaking. I also make sure to leave some frames without any mouths to represent the mouth closing. And that is how to animate the basic Lego run cycle. First, make the minifigure have both legs together. Then move one above the stud and lean the minifigure forward a little. At the same time, have the arms move opposite to the foot. Then balance the minifigure in between the studs. You can use sticky tack if you're having trouble to balance the minifigure. Then have the foot go down one stud further and move the arms down a little. Then the leg will go back to its original position and the arms will follow. Then just repeat this process with the other leg. If you understand the walk cycle, the run cycle should be super easy. When animating, lighting is very important. Adding different colored lights can really enhance your stop motions. To add different colored lights, I use transparent pieces. Most of the time, I get these from sets from cockpits and windshields. I will then attach them to a flashlight with tape to produce the color I need. Here is an example of a blaster without red lighting. And here is one with red lighting. And that is why. How to animate bows and crossbows in your brick films. For this effect, you're going to need a bow or a crossbow, sticky tack, and a short bar piece. First, attach sticky tack to the arrow and attach it to the center of the bow. You can make the arrow go back to make it look like the minifigure is charging the bow. When the arrow is being released, move the bar piece to the front of the bow. Then in the next frame, remove the sticky tack from the arrow and hold the bar piece out of frame. Then move the minifigure back and take the arrow completely out of frame. And that's... Before I animate, I normally storyboard. This gives me an idea of what kind of shots, angles, and scenes I want to create. These storyboards might not look like much to you, but these are normally only for me to see. I don't always follow my storyboards because it doesn't always work out the way I thought it would. How to make minifigures fly with jetpacks. First, add clay to the cone piece and attach it to the bottom of the jetpack. Use clay and a long Lego brick to hold the minifigure in midair. Change the cone piece to a 1x1 of choice. How to add fire effects to your animations. Here are the pieces that you will be needing. In this effect, you're going to want to move the flame piece in every picture. Right here, I'm just multiplying the amount of flames. This effect can also be added to flamethrowers. It's the same concept, you just add clay and spin the fire around in each frame. How to add grapple hook effects to your animations. Today I will show you 2 ways how to do this. Here are the pieces that you will be needing. The first way you can do this is by adding clay to a stud and then attaching it to the arm and then adding a bar. The second way is to add a stud to the hand and then have a string attached. For this part, you're gonna have to use the string, attach it with clay, and wrap it around your minifigure. How to add explosion effects to your animations. Here are the pieces that you will be needing. The general concept of this explosion is to have the explosion start small with transparent orange pieces and then slowly get bigger. Then have the explosion get smaller at the end. Around, you can add white pieces to represent smoke. How to add snow effects to your videos. First, drag in snow footage with a black background. You can adjust the clip to your footage. Then, you will find a little square icon on the left side that you can adjust to your clip. Then, open up the Inspector tab. If you scroll down, you will find a box that says Normal. Click on it and change it to Screen. And there you have snow effects. Is Stop Motion Studio Pro worth it? Many of you guys have asked if it was worth upgrading from Stop Motion Studio to the Pro version. And my simple answer to that is no. Let me explain. Many of you know that I use Stop Motion Studio Pro to animate. And you may be thinking to yourself, if I think it's not worth it, why did I buy it? Well, to put it simply, at the time I would do all my editing for my animations in Stop Motion Studio. And the only way I could import sound is if I bought the Pro version. At the time I thought it was worth it because I didn't know any other way to edit. Stop Motion Studio Pro had erasing features, mouth animations, and much more. However, I realized that I could get all these features from more advanced editing softwares for free. The only reason I would see someone buying the Pro version is if you want to do all your editing in one app. And that answers... What do you think you're doing? Excuse me? You're a part of it. A part of what? You need to calm down, sir. I was just going to the store. You're sweating. Yeah, it's hot. Aren't you sweating too in that suit? That's it.
It's over, Obi-Wan. I have the high ground.
Don't try it. That's all you've got?
I need to feel something. Harry, can you tell me something that'll piss me off? Boba Fett's better than Mondo. Yep, that'll do.
Maybe the Darksaber should belong to someone else.
Maybe that someone should be me.
I'm just gonna leave to Mandalore so I can redeem myself.
Master Skywalker, there are too many of them. What are we going to do?
Wait a second. Did you just call me a master? Well, in that case... Dang it. They were the only ones who ever called me a master.
General Kenobi!
Ben?
Hello. Goodbye. Hello there.
General Kenobi!
You have removed your helmet. What's worse, you did so of your own free will.
Well, Bo-Katan takes off her helmet.
Bo-Katan is a different kind of Mandalorian.
Oh, well then I'll just go and redeem myself.
Redemption is no longer possible since the destruction of our homeworld.
Well, I'm gonna go anyways.
Oh, come on. What ship could be so amazing that you wouldn't realize you were in the middle of a space battle? Out of my way! The N1 Naboo Starfighter, an old Republic classic. Pristine! Still has the chromium undercarriage. I must fly it. That's exactly what
Alright, LEGO collectors, use this sound to show off your minifigures. Show us your first minifigure, the minifigure everyone wants but doesn't have, your most valuable minifigure, your most recent minifigure, and your favorite.
Hello there.
Hello.
General Kenobi.
Let's do a quick room tour. Here is where I animate. I have all my handy tools right here. Right next to that is where I store most of my Lego pieces. They're all mostly sorted by color so that it's easier to get my Lego pieces when I animate. I have another section for all my interior design pieces such as walls. In this drawer, I store my X-Wings and custom A-Wings. The next drawer is where I store my Millennium Falcon and this Jack 14 ship. This table is a little mess. I store lots of my clones and Mandalorians here, as well as other ships and vehicles. This other shelf is where I store the rest of my ships, including my Republic gunship. Here I also have some more TIE fighters and some more Rebel ships. This LEGO Star Wars set probably has the most features in 2021. Set 75311, the Imperial Armored Marauder, has 478 pieces and 4 minifigures, 2 of which are exclusive to the set. First, we have an Artillery Stormtrooper with some amazing yellow markings and a pauldron. He also comes with a built backpack and mortar. We also get 2 Stormtroopers and Grief Karga. This set has lots of greebling all around. First, you can open the front to fit 1 minifigure seated. On either side of the cockpit, you can launch 2 stud shooters. There is also a hatch on the side that you can open. Unfortunately, you can't stand a minifigure inside. Right next to that, there is a rotating cannon and a place to store 1 crate. If we go up to the top, there are 2 hatches. If you open the first hatch, you can fit a minifigure standing. And if you open the second hatch, you can fit 2 minifigures seated. Finally, in the back, there is a dual cannon with 2 stud shooters. If you pull down this compartment, you can fit 1 minifigure seated. And that's why I think this is probably one of the best LEGO Star Wars sets of 2021. Set 75316, the Mandalorian Starfighter, comes with 544 pieces and it includes 3 exclusive minifigures. First off, we have Bo-Katan with amazing printing from head to toe. If you remove the helmet, there is a double-sided head. LEGO also included a hair piece for this minifigure. Next, we have a Mandalorian Loyalist with equally as good printing. And finally, we have Gar Saxon with a cool helmet mold with horns and an exclusive head. This set captures the look of the in-universe ship very well. First, if you remove this cockpit, you can fit 2 minifigures seated. Unfortunately, there are gaps on the side of the cockpit. Next, we have stud shooters on either side. To fly this ship, you can pull down the wings. The cockpit area can also spin around, and that's why I think this is probably the second best LEGO Star Wars set of 2022. Set 75342, the Republic fighter tank, has 262 pieces and 6 minifigures, 4 of which are exclusive to this set. First, this Mace Windu minifigure has amazing arm printing. Next, we have the 187th Legion Clone Commander. This minifigure is pretty much just an Airborne Trooper. Next we have two 187th Legion Troopers. These guys have amazing purple markings. And finally we have two B1 battle droids. This set can hold a minifigure in the front by removing this X-Wing cockpit. You can also remove this hatch and fit one minifigure standing on the top. One problem is that you can't close the hatch once the minifigure is there. There is also a back hatch where you can slide a minifigure in. There are also two rotating cannons on each side with spring-loaded shooters, and that's why I think... In my last video, I said, this is probably the second best LEGO Star Wars set of 2022. Well, now I may have to reconsider. Set 75336, the Inquisitor Transport Scythe, has 924 pieces and 4 minifigures that are all exclusive to the set. The first minifigure in the set is Obi-Wan with a cool cloth piece and a double-sided head. Then we have the Grand Inquisitor with an interesting armor piece and a black cloth cape. After we have the fifth brother with his unique hat piece, and finally we have Reva. This set is very well shaped. I'm surprised by the amount of different angles LEGO was able to capture. First, we have a ramp that pulls down, then we have a full interior with space to place 3 minifigures seated, and a few standing in the back. There is also a spot to place the lightsaber blades of the Inquisitors. On either side there are spring-loaded shooters. And finally, you can deploy the wings for flight. And well, this is probably the best LEGO Star Wars set of 2022. Set 75337, the ATT Walker, comes with 1082 pieces and 8 minifigures, 5 of which are exclusive to the set. First, we have the very much anticipated Phase 2 Commander Cody. He has amazing printing all around and an exclusive head. Next, we have 3 212 clone troopers. Then we have a clone gunner and 3 B1 battle droids. This set has many amazing features. First, you can pull out a compartment to fit a pilot for this vehicle. There is also a cannon on the top. You can fit one minifigure and shoot 2 stud shooters. The cannon can go up and down and swivel all around. There are also 4 smaller cannons on the front and 2 in the back. These cannons can move around. There is also a handle to carry the set. You can open the front and remove a plate where you can place 2 troopers. You can also open up the back where you can fit 5 troopers seated. And finally, there is a spider droid. And that's why I think... 2 ways to get rid of dust on your LEGO pieces. The first way is to wet a towel with water and get rid of as much dust as you can. This works well for larger pieces like windshields and slopes. The problem with this technique is that it can get into small areas like in between studs. The second way is to use a brush. Right here I have 2 makeup brushes. Brushes are great because they don't get the LEGO pieces wet, and they can easily get in between the studs. The only downside is that it takes much longer to dust, since you have to go over the same area multiple times to get it fully dusted. And those are... LEGO has stopped making these stud shooters and replaced them with these newer stud shooters. And well, they're a mixed bag. First, these newer stud shooters are much more powerful than the old weak stud shooters. This is definitely an improvement in regards to that. Furthermore, the stud on the new stud shooter isn't as exposed as the last one. However, this is also a downside because you can't attach anything to the front of the stud shooter. This limits its use in mock building. On top of that, it's bulkier than the last one. This makes it even more apparent on LEGO sets. And if you didn't already know, LEGO needs to update this piece. The sun visor was created in 2008 for LEGO Star Wars Clone Troopers. They specially designed holes on the sides of the helmets, where you could insert a visor or a rangefinder. Over the years, LEGO made this piece in different colors, and its counterpart, the rangefinder. This was amazing at the time, however now it's kind of outdated. It just doesn't fit right on the minifigures. It's too oversized and not so accurate. For reference, this is what the visor is supposed to look like, and this is how LEGO is portraying it. And that's why I think LEGO has a huge problem with their advertisement on their LEGO Star Wars Clone Troopers. The 2022 ATT came with many minifigures, including 3 212 Clone Troopers. LEGO did a pretty bad job advertising the 212 Clone Trooper. If we look on the box, the print looks like this. And this is the print on the physical product. It's a little disappointing that LEGO printed this minifigure poorly, since they got it right in 2013 and in 2014. On top of this, in the newer 2023 501st Battle Pack, on the Clone Officer, they're advertising the rangefinder at a lower position. This makes it look more appealing, but in reality, the rangefinder is in the higher hole, which makes it look worse. I am personally fine with the higher hole position, but what hurts me more is that LEGO is doing more false advertisement, and that's why I think the 2022 ATT included a Phase 2 Commander Cody. This minifigure came with an orange visor for the first time. And the good thing is that this set came with a few extra orange visors. So now I can take my Phase 1 Commander Cody and remove this inaccurate visor and replace it with this orange one. This is much more accurate to his appearance in the Clone Wars. And I hope LEGO produces this piece in more colors. And you might have heard that LEGO may never produce this piece ever again. LEGO wastegapes are an amazing part of LEGO minifigures, especially Star Wars minifigures. But over the last few years, we have been getting less and less wastegapes. It started when LEGO updated their LEGO Snowtrooper in 2019. They removed the wastecape and instead printed it on. At the beginning, it seemed like this would be a one-time exception for this minifigure. But then after, we started getting more minifigures with printed wastegapes instead of physical wastegapes. They look so inaccurate and incomplete. And whilst I understand that LEGO had gotten complaints that the wastegapes were yellowing and breaking, I still think they should include them. They should be an option. If you don't want your wastegapes to deteriorate, don't put them on. And that's why I think spring-loaded shooters come in almost every LEGO Star Wars set. So here are 3 things you can do with your spring-loaded shooters. First, they can be used to represent blaster bolts or lasers. These can be used in mocks and in your brick films. I know that you can use lightsaber blades to do the same thing, but spring-loaded shooters are longer and come in different colors. Spring-loaded shooters are good at acting as extensions. When I am animating a brick film and I need something held out of frame, I can attach sticky tack to the object and then place my spring-loaded shooter on top. This will reduce the amount of shadows and the chances of seeing my hand in the shot. You can also make cool mocks with the brick that launches the laser. This piece has an interesting design on it. This can make for some amazing wall designs and cool blast doors. And well, flick-fire missiles were very common among LEGO sets back in the 2010 era. To use them, you would simply flick the back and it would go flying away. So I will show you some interesting uses for them. First, they can be used as blasters on vehicles. LEGO does this pretty often on their sets. I use flick-fire missiles to create this cool jetpack on a custom aerial trooper. They look great as tubes. You can also use them to add greebling to your builds. This will break up a boring wall. They look amazing as antennas as well. And just to remind you, 3 ways to build LEGO blast doors. First, before we build them, we need to lay out a foundation. I placed a few tiles and then placed walls on either side. The first way is to build them with large panels. Here I have 2 panels for a double door, but you can use 1. For double doors, I usually place a plate that's longer than the door on top. This acts as a handle. I also place a 1x2 brick at the end of each handle. This is to stop the door from going any further than the center. You can also build blast doors with plates. Just make sure to add tiles on top because then the doors will be too flimsy. The last way is to use a little bit of Technic to open a blast door. Simply take one of these pieces with teeth and place it on top. Then take this gear piece and attach it to an axle. Place the axle in a 1x2 with a hole. Now place this little build on top. Now you can open your door without touching it. And those were... Stud shooters are one of the most hated LEGO pieces, but I'm going to show you 2 uses for them that will prove to you that they aren't so bad. First, you can improve your stud shooters to make them better blasters. Just build small sub-assemblies and attach them to the front and back of the stud shooter. You can make snipers, bazookas, heavy blasters, and machine guns. You name it, stud shooters get the job done. The next thing you can do with stud shooters is use them in your mocks. You may think that a piece this specialized has very little use, but you would be wrong. You can build little walls for your troopers to take cover behind. The gray pieces on the stud shooter give a nice texture to the wall. You can also use them to create a window ledge. The handle of the stud shooter looks like a support. You can also use them as hat holders. Simply place a stud with a hole in it in the hat and attach it to one of the hooks. And well, 4 ways to upgrade your stud shooters. First, you can turn your stud shooter into a bazooka by attaching a cylinder piece to the front and a lightsaber hilt, and then in the back, a 1x1 stud and a cone piece. The second build is a sniper. Simply attach a bracket piece to the front of the stud shooter, and then a cylinder piece, and then a Technic pin. The next thing you can build is a machine gun. Attach a stud to the front of the stud shooter, and then attach this piece that I don't know the name of. After, place a Technic axle and slide 2 bushy pieces on top. And then the last thing you can build is a heavy blaster. First, attach a 1x2 plate, and then attach a lightsaber hilt, and then stack 2 1x1 studs at the bottom. Just avoid doing this. And those are my top 3 favorite videos of 2022. Coming in at number 3 is my video on how to make 3 Dark Troopers look like 9, even though it was 8. I didn't have a lot of time to film this video, so I did a little miscalculation when I was counting them. This was probably one of my most creative videos on the channel. At number 2 is part 1 of my Clone Rebellion series. If you haven't already seen it, I would encourage you to go check it out. I put many hours into this video and was very different from my usual Mandalorian series. And speaking of Mandalorians, at number 1 is my Allies and Enemies series. I spent well over a year producing this series. This was, without a doubt, my most ambitious project that I have ever done. 2022 was an amazing year for the channel, so Happy New Year everyone. And those were all of my shorts of 2022.